Hello and welcome to Unqualified Opinions. I'm Will Beiermann, joined by the man, Paul Heires, and we're going to be once again reacting to ESPN's weekly power rankings. Once again, doing the top 10, plus these guys' mandatory self-esteem crippling, emotion-crushing shot at the Detroit Lions, which is entirely uncalled for, but seems to keep happening. And starting off at number 10, we have the Tennessee Titans, who had a big win against the Bills this week. Paul, how do you feel about the Titans at 10?
Well-deserved ranking for them at 10. I think they really showed the league how you beat the Bills. You know, that first week loss against the Steelers was kind of a fluke, in my opinion. I think this was a true win. The Titans have really bounced back from their loss to the Jets. I think 10 is a good spot for them.
I would have them over the number 9 team, which is your Kansas City Chiefs, who are currently 3-3, no longer in the basement, but really looked bad in the first half against Washington. Obviously came back to blow them out, but there's concerns there. Patrick Mahomes, a lot of interceptions by his standards. Currently leading the league in turnovers is the Chiefs. They have 14 total. Paul, how do you feel about seeing your boys at number 9?
You know, I think they are a little bit high, but at the end of the day, you had to listen to what Pat Mahomes had to say after the game. It's about the wins and losses, right? They won the game. And if you look at the score, it wasn't really that close. Real quick, let me just run through 11 through 14 just to give you an idea of who's kind of just outside. At the Saints at 14, Raiders at 13, Browns at 12, and Bengals at 11. I don't really see any of those teams being above the Chiefs. Now, I do kind of agree with the Titans being kind of a better team, right? They were obviously able to get it done against Buffalo, which Kansas City could not say, but I still think the Chiefs should be a top 10 team as of right now.
And I'll agree with you. I mean, for power rankings wise, I think they're not exactly number 9, but I mean, in general, we all kind of know the Chiefs are going to pick it up by the end of the season. So moving on to number 8, we have the Los Angeles Chargers, who had a really kind of baffling loss to me, at least honestly, against the Baltimore Ravens this week. Paul, what do you think about the Chargers right now?
Yeah, and I think, you know, it looks weird that they only drop one spot after such a big loss, but you got to take into context the fact the Ravens have been playing well lately. Ever since their win against the Chiefs, they've really kind of picked it up week in and week out, and they're starting to look like a top contender in the AFC right now. I think the Chargers, they got some things to figure out, but I definitely think they could pull it out and win the West this season. We'll have to see how they can fare against some of their other tougher opponents.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there. 8 is kind of a weird. It's weird seeing them not drop more, but I feel like they're kind of still a tier above the Chiefs and above the Titans and the rest of them. So I think 8's kind of the lowest you can put them. Moving up to 7, we have a 5-1 team, the Green Bay Packers. Shout out to Tim Seipel. Miss you, bro.
A weird way to win over Cincinnati. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers did what he does. The injuries are piling up, and you can start to see that happening. Their secondary is looking pretty weak. The fact they dropped 2 spots is interesting, but if you look at who went above them, I think you can see why they dropped to 7. I think 7's a good spot for them.
Paul, moving up to number 6, another 5-1 team talked about in the bid earlier. Baltimore Ravens have really turned a corner, like you said, since they beat the Chiefs. Do you feel like 5 or 6 is a good spot for them? Is it too low? Is it too high? I'm honestly, off the cuff, kind of thinking it's too low right now. I think I could have them at least at number 4 comfortably. I mean, there's even a good argument to move them over the Bills, who we'll get to later. But Paul, where do you think the Ravens should really be right now?
And a lot of people will point at the Lions win and the Colts win as being kind of, are you sure this team is really a top 6 team? But I think people are sleeping on the Colts a little bit, and we might get into that later in the season. But as far as the Ravens go, I think they are looking good. They're favored against the Bengals this week, and I think they will win that game just because Lamar Jackson has kind of elevated his game the last couple weeks.
And at number 5, we have the Dallas Cowboys, America's team, or America's most hated team, depending on who you're talking to, if you're talking to me. So far, win they have, currently at 5-1 with Dak Prescott playing some great football, coming off of a pretty scary injury last season, so he's definitely back in top form. And more importantly, the Cowboys' defense has really stepped up this year after a couple years of being a sore spot there. Trayvon Diggs, for one, 7 interceptions in 6 games. Absolutely phenomenal season. He's got their defense riding high. Paul, are the Cowboys for real? Do they belong at number 5? You got them higher? You got them lower?
I wouldn't have them that high. I feel like they could drop a couple and still be in a good spot. But yeah, I think they need to prove a little bit more for me. I think they could easily take the NFC East, but once again, not really saying much there.
Then up to number 4, we have the Tampa Bay Tom Brady's Buccaneers. Buccaneers, that's that team's name. Tom Brady, though, still 2,000 yards, currently leading the NFL. They've been dominant on offense. The defense is held up. Starting to see some injuries. Is this going to be another? Are they a contender still, Paul?
Of course. I mean, and it's so hard to say that just because you don't want to see the same teams in the same spots every year, but let's be honest, they've taken care of business against teams they've needed to, right? They've got the Bears coming up this week. Should be able to take care of business again. I wouldn't expect them to drop anytime soon.
They haven't played down to the competition, which is a big trap we can see from top teams sometimes. I think you can make an argument to have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers ranked probably 2 spots higher, up to number 2 if you want to. And you also have to keep into account the fact that while the power rankings are addressing these teams right now, this is definitely going to be a different team come playoff time when they take it up a notch, which they will. Moving up to number 3, though, a team that has not had the same playoff success lately, but is really trying to make that push to become a Super Bowl contender. The LA Rams, led by the boy, Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp. Absolute dominant duo, both top 5 in passing and receiving yards right now. The Rams still taking care of business at 5-1 in a really difficult conference.
They finally, I think, have the offense to get back to where they were in the Super Bowl a couple seasons ago. And speaking of which, they're playing your Lions this week. That'll be an interesting game just as far as the 2 quarterbacks playing their old teams and seeing how that goes. What do you think about that? I want to hear this.
Stafford's going to shred us. He's going to destroy us so bad. Detroit's both a team having a tough season and also a very injured team right now.
Good segue to rank our Detroit Lions here.
You monster.
I've got right here that they have dropped 1 spot to number 32, the last winless team in the league.
I think, honestly, the most upsetting thing for me right now, again, given the injuries and the regime change and yada, 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 all that stuff, is that if we're going to be this bad, I really wish we could see a Trevor Lawrence or even a Zach Wilson, like a top quarterback prospect at least, kind of coming up in there. There's still time for that, but so far, Matt Corral's probably the best prospect, and I'm not entirely sold on him being like even a top 10 draft pick guy. Yeah,
stay tuned. We will definitely get into huge draft discussion come this spring and get you leading up to the NFL draft in April. But back to the rankings, at number 2, we've got Buffalo Bills. What do you think about them over the Rams and the other 1-loss teams?
I actually don't like it. I mean, for one, the Bills have been number 1 for the longest time, and I think the past 2 weeks we've both, me and Marco and you have all talked about it at various points, like the undefeated Cardinals in the NFC West should probably be ahead of the Bills. And I mean, this loss by them really cemented it. Baltimore came out, and that was a pretty huge statement win for them. The Bills are obviously still a contender. I think they're the most dangerous team in the AFC for now, as long as the Chiefs are still kind of struggling. But I think two's too high for the Bills at this point. I'd probably have them down. I'd personally have them down at 4th. I'd put them below the Rams. I'd put them below the Buccaneers. I might even put them below the Ravens at this point. And then we're just going to wrap it up. We'll move on to number 1 with the undefeated Cardinals. Not a whole lot to say here. Kyler Murray's still doing his thing. Cliff Kingsbury's still doing his thing. Cardinals are rolling 6-0.
An impressive win on the road against the Browns and really kind of shut that defense up. I think a lot of people were looking to see what the Browns could do against Arizona, and it kind of just looked like Arizona had their way in that game.
And then Cardinals probably going to remain undefeated. They got Houston this weekend, so for them, really, the matchups we watching for the Cardinals, if you're trying to see when they might get that first loss, is going to be Thursday the 28th when they take on the Green Bay Packers. But until then, smooth sailing for the Cardinals. So that's going to be it for us for today for NFL Power Rankings on Unqualified Opinions. I'm Will Beiermann.
And I'm Paul Heires.
And we'll see you guys next time. Let us know what you want to see. Leave your own unqualified opinions. You guys have a good week.